Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this regular council meeting of Monday, December 18th, 2023. I'm Councillor Terry O'Keefe, sitting in to chair this evening's council meeting as Mayor McNeil Smith is under the weather. He will be attending the meeting via Zoom. However, under our council procedure bylaws, the chair of the meeting must attend in person, and hence, as acting mayor for December, I will be chairing tonight. I'd next like to move on to our territorial acknowledgement and acknowledge that in Sydney we are here and very fortunate to live, work, and play on the ancestral lands of the Wasanich people, and we're grateful for their stewardship of these lands for millennia and that they continue to share these lands with us. In terms of the agenda, moving on to that, ding, 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 sorry. Let's move that out of the way. Yeah, thank you. Cheers. There is a late item on the agenda. Did staff want to comment on that, Mr. Humble?
No, we can comment on it
Okay.
when the report is introduced.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's an amended recommendation from staff under item 13B, so we'll look at that a little bit later in the meeting. Next, we'll move on to public participation.
Point of order, just have to approve the agenda.
Approval of the agenda, yes. Okay, with that late amendment, I'll look for approval of the agenda.
So moved as amended.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carried. Public participation is next. I don't see any members of the public in attendance. Ms. Morton, I don't believe we have anybody online. Okay, so we'll move along right into bylaws. So first is bylaw or item 5A regarding garbage collection and disposal of refuse. And I'll look to staff for an introduction for that, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the August 21st meeting, Council approved a 5-year renewal of the town's refuse collection contract. Following many years of highly advantageous rates, the latest contract is quite a bit higher than the previous contract due to inflationary pressures. Sydney's rates will now be similar to those found elsewhere in the region. However, we do provide more frequent service than most other jurisdictions. The new rates are also impacted by tipping fees at Heartland Landfill, which have also gone up. The attached bylaw sets the rates required to pay for the contracted services on a cost recovery basis. The quarterly rate for full service is now $60 a quarter or $20 per month, and there is no impact on municipal taxes as this is collected on the quarterly utility bill. Thank you.
Council. I'll turn to council if they have any questions of staff on the amendments. Okay, seeing none, there's a recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. I will move that collection and disposal of refuse bylaw number 2259 be given first reading.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Motion carried.
I move second reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Yes. Any discussion? Yes, Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reiterate, I've spoken to this a little bit before, just for people who will be watching the video or who will look at it later on, just how good of a value, that even with this increase, this is for the residents of Sydney. As someone who lives in North Saanich, I pay, for the same service, I would pay $34 to $40 a month. And it's not run by the district, it's you have to reach out to contractors yourself. So even with this increase, as large as it may seem, it's still a really good deal when you compare just what's happening next door. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor? Motion carried.
Thank you. I'll move third reading.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. No. I think. Yeah, it's a cursor, sorry. All right, moving on to item 5B, an amendment to miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw. And I'll look to staff for an introduction, please.
Thank you again. So any fees charged by the municipality must be authorized through a bylaw. Our miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw is a catch-all for a series of fees and charges that are not captured in any other bylaw. There are two major changes featured tonight. One is to add filming fees to correspond with what's in place in many other regional municipalities. And these fees have been set in cooperation with the film industry. The other major change is satisfying a previous council direction to review parking fees within the town. There are two increases proposed. One is to the fees at the long-term parking lot F, administered by Robbins Parking, and the other is a modest increase to the monthly parking rate at other town lots. If council has any questions on the report, I'd be pleased to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. I'll turn to members of council if they have any questions.
What was the recommendation if there's no questions?
Oh, okay.
I'll move that bylaw number 2260 to amend miscellaneous fees and charges bylaw number 1711 be given first reading.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, motion carried.
Move second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Motion carries.
And I'll move third reading.
Second.
And any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving along to item 5C, amendment of the 2023-2027 financial plan bylaw, and we'll look to staff again for an introduction.
So we are amending our 2023 financial plan to add a recently approved Parkland purchase and the need for borrowing approval. So in order to advance that borrowing approval to the Ministry of, what are they called now? Municipal Affairs, we do need to add this purchase into our financial plan. Now the second important change is that we are also amending the plan to change the funding sources for the Beacon West Roundabout project. When the grant was received and the construction contract awarded earlier this year, we told council that we'd bring back funding options at a later time to show how we're eliminating the need to borrow. This represents that amendment. Other than these two changes, all of the other amendments have already been approved by council resolution.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hisik. And any questions from council? No? Okay, seeing no questions, there is a recommendation. Mr. Novak, Councillor Novak?
I'll read in the recommendation that council give first reading to bylaw number 2261, a bylaw to amend financial plan bylaw number 2254 and 2023.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries.
And I move second reading.
Second.
And any discussion? Okay, I have a couple points to make. I'm not in favor of amending the financial plan for this particular purpose, for the borrowing for the park. The way I look at borrowing is how does it compare to other priorities that we have, and is the benefit derived from this override the costs of going into debt, paying financing charges, and perhaps setting other priorities back. When we looked at borrowing for the Beacon Roundabout and the Sterling realignment, I could justify that because I think those were things that were really needed, and those were things that were identified years ago. There's been significant industrial development in the area, planned hotel, proposed apartment building, so that roundabout was a high priority, and I could justify that. If we were perhaps borrowing to build to invest 1.5 million in a housing development, I could also justify that. But for me, this case is different. I don't personally think that the need for parkland is a critical need. While we did see some shortages in the park needs assessment recently, I think that when we factor in the parks and green space that are available in local schools and parks, I think we have enough parkland. Secondly, in our Parks Master Plan, there's a lot of parks that we haven't had a chance to develop, and we're not likely to get around to developing those for several years. And so it just doesn't seem prudent to me to borrow money for parkland that, when we have existing parkland that we haven't been able to develop. And I guess, also, if we were to make a purchase for parkland, I would be more inclined to do so for something that was in the Galaran area. As the parkland needs assessment showed, that area has had minimal investment in parkland, and since they're divided by the rest of the highway, they don't have easy access to other park areas like the residents around 3rd Street, as well as open beach areas. So for those reasons, it's hard for me to justify borrowing for that particular park. Mayor McNeil Smith, did you have comments? No? Yeah. Ms. Morton, could you just move the cursor on, or somebody, because it looks like the mayor's hand is up. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right, any other comments? Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. I will just quickly say, just for the record, that we've discussed this park acquisition before as a council, and so I feel comfortable including the asset-free borrowing for parkland space, simply because we know that parkland acquisition and green space is a priority for our town. People are very interested in the Parks Master Plan. This space may not be in the most optimal position, but a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. I don't want to not do something on the off chance that something might come up that we have no indication ever would. And the idea of using borrowed money that we didn't have to take out for the roundabout because we were able to get a grant from the federal government to put in some potential green space when we've used all that grant money to build more vehicle infrastructure and cause more environmental destruction, and that now we might instead use a smaller amount of borrowed money to perhaps put back a little bit of green space seems to me a very fair trade.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? All seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Oops. And opposed? Okay, just myself opposed. Thank you.
I'll move third reading of the bill.
All right.
Second.
And any further discussion? See none. All in favor? Opposed? It's myself opposed. Thank you. And we will move on to item 5D. Borrowing for parkland purchase.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that, related to the previous item, the town needs to borrow up to 1.3 million for part of the cost of this parkland purchase. At the same time, we're repealing our borrowing bylaw for the roundabout, thanks to the large grant that we received. So the net impact of these two transactions is a reduction of our intended borrowing by 700,000. The staff report outlines the borrowing process for council's information in quite a level of detail. Following 3 readings, the bylaw is submitted to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs for their review. Assent-free borrowing is proposed for this debt issue. This falls well within our limit for this type of borrowing. I have included a recommended council resolution to firm up that assent-free as part of this process, should it proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. And any questions for Mr. Hissick from members of council? All right, seeing none.
With the
I'll
recommendation?
Go ahead with the recommendation.
I'll move recommendation 1 that council give first reading to Parkland Acquisition Loan Authorization Bylaw number 2262.
Any discussion, or no, sorry, all in favor? Thank you.
Move second reading?
And any discussion? I'll just state, as I mentioned in the previous discussion in regards to amending the financial plan, pretty well the same rationale as I would vote against this, so I won't repeat that. But just to say, I'm not in favor of borrowing for this Parkland purchase. Any other further discussion? Yes, Councillor Novak?
Thank you. I'd like to make just one brief comment about this. I think this is one of those few situations where borrowing is not only recommended but advised. Real estate is one of those things that lasts forever. So we're not borrowing money to buy something that's going to disappear in a short period of time, like, for example, Christmas decorations or something intangible, something like that's depreciating. Real estate is one of those things that over time will appreciate and will make whatever money we borrow to effect that purchase look very small, in the final reckoning. So I think this is something that we should be proud of. I think it's important for us to increase our inventory of parkland, as we learned in the previous council meeting. So I'm very happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Only myself is opposed.
And I'll move third reading?
Second.
And any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed is myself.
And I'll move recommendation number 2 that council select assent-free borrowing for approval of the debt.
Second.
And any discussion on that? Yes, Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to provide context, given past voting, I did vote against assent-free borrowing for the Beacon Roundabout, but the distinction for me in that case was that there were unknown costs associated with what the overall total cost of the roundabout would be, and I did have concerns on cost overlays based on supply and interest rates and everything else that we weren't positive would be in condition at the time. So thanks to staff and their excellent grant writing abilities, we were able to acquire a $5 million grant, which made it all work out in the end. But I did have concerns based on possible large overruns of costs, and that's why I went in that direction, whereas this is a finite amount of money that we know what we're actually spending, so I can get behind this motion and support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Just myself opposed. Okay, thank you, Council. We will now move to item 7A, which is the adoption of minutes from our special council meeting on December 11th.
Move adoption.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Thank you. All right, and no mayor's report, councilors' reports, committee reports. We'll move ahead to staff reports. 13A, which is the Breathitt Park Playground.
Point of order, we have a item 9A. Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
Oh, you scared me there. All right. So we will move along to item 13A, which is the Breathitt Park Playground options, and I'll turn to staff for an introduction on that, please.
Good evening. Based on previous direction of council, staff worked with Habitat Systems to develop options for the future Breathitt Park Playground. Habitat developed 6 different options for the town to consider, ranging in price from approximately $130,000, which is within the available budget for the playground, up to over $285,000. There are benefits and drawbacks to each of these options. 4 of the options include fully rubberized surfacing, and 2 include a hybrid of both rubberized and wood chip surfacing, where rubberized surfacing would be included up to the accessible elements and wood chip would be included in other areas. The hybrid surfacing is a more economical approach while still providing access to the accessible playground features. 2 options include a ramp for wheelchair access on the playground, and 3 options include a We Go Round, which is a unique specialized wheelchair accessible playground element, which has been discussed during previous council meetings. If option 1 is selected, additional funding is not required. However, if any of the other options are selected, additional funding is required, which is why the recommendation is worded in such a way that requires council to refer to the table on pages 1 and 2 of the staff report and fill in the additional funding requirement based on the option selected. Because this is a fairly budget required decision, that council or staff didn't make a recommendation on the options. All of these would be suitable for the neighborhood, and it's really just where council wants to go with this playground. And I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Cleary, and I'll turn to, first of all, Councillor Duncan with questions.
Yeah, thank you. And my apologies, I thought I'd sent this one by email and then discovered that my email ate it before I was able to resend it. So my question being, why we have ramp or We Go Round kind of included, and is that, there's never an option where there's both a ramp and the We Go Round? Was that merely space constraints for kind of the distance that moving structure needs to be from the rest of it? Because I know that the 1.5 to 5 structure was taken out, I'm guessing for space and for cost considerations, but.
Through to Councillor Duncan, it was really looking at options for a child in a wheelchair having some play element there, which is why with some of the ramp options that We Go Round wasn't included. So yeah, however, I guess if we could go back to the drawing board if that was a decision of council, and come back again in to a future budget or a future council meeting. Yeah, I can answer any other questions if you have any other.
Okay, well, that was really it, if there was a constraint or, yeah, what the decision was for that, so, thanks.
All right, any other questions from council? All right, seeing none, there's several, Councillor Garnett?
No, I was just gonna move a recommendation, Chair.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
Open up for discussion, depending how people feel about it. I'll move the recommendation that the contract for Breathitt Park playground equipment be awarded to Habitat Systems Incorporated based on option 4, as described in the report to council dated December 18th, 2023, and 2, that the budget for Breathitt Park playground project be increased by $156,000 with the funding coming from the Growing Communities Fund.
Second.
All right, Councillor Garnett, would you like to motivate?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've done, I reached out to the senior manager of Panorama Rec, who I serve on the commission with, and asked about the Greenglade playground because it's referenced, and it was in fact designed primarily for 5 to 12. So in this particular area, I happen to know that there's a lot of very young children. There's a lot of home-based daycares with really young children, and I think it would be really great if our community could have the added playground of 1.5 to 5, so that there's something else for them, and with that extra money, it would still leave just under $2,860,000 in the Growing Communities Fund. And I also noted by speaking to staff that they do plan to put the path from the part by Ocean and also through the Red Wing connector, which is an important part of the playground, because as it sits now without the crosswalk and sidewalk on Ocean Avenue, it's not exactly necessarily a safe area for people to bring their kids, whereas coming through Red Wing with the path through there is much safer, and I think people will be able to walk, which is what we want them to do in a neighborhood park, not a sturdy drive, and will provide safety to the children and the people taking their children there. And as far as the rubberized surface, and staff mentions about the wheelchair accessibility and how difficult it is to move through, and I had also heard from other members of the community that with the engineered wood chips, it's not just that, it's strollers for parents that to push through, and also basically any mobility aid. So I think staff's recommendation about the rubberized surface is a very smart way to go. And I would just like to see that extra piece of infrastructure for the lower age group, just because there's nothing really in the area, and knowing the population around there, I think it would be very beneficial for the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Duck?
Yeah, I concur with my colleague, Councillor Garnett. I think it's important that we recognize that this will be a major destination park on the west side, and I think that we should do everything we can to make it as attractive and welcoming as possible for all age groups and all abilities. So I fully support this motion going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Thank you. I'm hesitant to support this option because of the cost differential and the fact that it's only got actually really one accessible item on it. The 5 to 12 structure is now no longer accessible. The 1.5 to 5 structure includes a transfer point, but that doesn't address the concerns we heard about people who are caregivers who have disabilities themselves, or heavier children that are difficult to lift out of their chair. And the friendship swing is not something that people, again, can use if they're in a wheelchair. So we're spending a lot more money for the We Go Round, which looks like a lot of fun. I mean, it's also accessible, and it's something all age groups and all abilities will use. On the other hand, it does have that mobile element to it that does give me some concern about the ongoing costs for maintenance. I know, the Flying Fox or whatever it is that was put in at Rathdown Park is constantly needing to be maintained because teenagers and probably heavier people use it in weather and inclement weather. And so I am concerned about spending a lot of money for something that in the end is not actually being more accessible, is not, and is entering that cost, whereas my preference was option 2 with the ramp, because the ramp allows all ages and all abilities to basically use that structure in the same way. 1.5 to 5-year-olds will love still using it because it's got a ramp. They're still able to use it just as well as any other kid, and they will enjoy that. And it allows the kids, any kids that have mobility issues in a wheelchair, to access a higher elevation, which is something they're frequently shut out of on regular playground equipment specifically, because their climbing equipment isn't meant for them, and if they've got that transfer requirement, it isn't there. So I feel the options with the ramp are actually more accessible and more friendly for all ages at a lower cost and a lower ongoing cost. I mean, I asked about the We Go Round because I thought that could be fun to add, and that would increase that cost there. But honestly, bang for our buck and making it something that would actually be usable, I don't think we need to spend that additional money. And my preference would be to pick one of the ramp structures. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rintoul, did you have comments?
Hesitantly, I suppose, because I actually came in here liking option 3. And if I may, Chair, I just want to clarify through staff, because the reference here, as I'd understood it, with option 3, that is a 5 to 12 play structure. Is that not correct?
Through to Councillor Rintoul, yes, option 3 is a 5 to 12 play structure. It is slightly shorter than option 4 because it has a transfer point instead of the climbing element to access it. But it is a 5 to 12 structure.
Thank you. And I only try to clarify that in the context of Councillor Garnett's points, because I appreciate the insight on the demographic in the community and the user observations that you had, Councillor Garnett. I think I landed on this one in part because of the price point that Councillor Duncan spoke to. It seems to offer a number of avenues for all users, including the We Go Round that we heard about at our last meeting. So I don't want to make this an overly challenging process, because I'm not necessarily opposed to the motion that's on the table, but I just wanted to clarify that I certainly came in supporting option 3, just looking at the price difference between option 3 and option 4, and I felt it accommodated all users. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Novak.
I came in much like my colleague here, but supporting option number 2. I think it's all we need. I don't think we need to spend much more money to get an accessible, fully rubberized play structure. I think the Friendship Swing is a good addition. The We Go Round would be nice, but we don't have an option that has number 2 with the We Go Round. It's some other, well, maybe that's number 3. It's so hard to tell here. Anyway, I think this is too complicated to decide because everybody has a slightly different perspective of what constitutes a good playground surface. But for what it's worth, I support number 2.
Thank you, Councillor. Mayor McNeil-Smith, your comments?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to colleagues for your comments so far. I'm sorry if this question was addressed earlier or in the introduction, but with regards to option number 3, why can it not be wheelchair accessible with a structure ramp? Through you, Chair.
Staff?
Through to Mayor McNeil-Smith, that is, we could swap out the play structure that is shown in option 3, like the 5 to 12-year-old with the wheelchair, the ramp structure. It will be more expensive, and we don't have that budget item available at this time. But if there was direction of council to do so, we could do that.
So thank you. A follow-up through the chair is, so it's not wheelchair, under option 3, it's not wheelchair accessible at all? It's fully rubberized,
Yes.
but none of the play area would be wheelchair accessible?
So the We Go Round is a fully accessible, wheelchair accessible play element. And then there is a transfer point on the 5 to 12-year-old structure there, which would allow children with mobility challenges to be transferred onto the equipment from their mobility device. But they would not be able to wheel up it on a wheelchair.
Thank you. I'm more in favor of option 3, partially for cost, but partially for cost benefit of what we're actually providing. I think we can appreciate from previous discussions on this that there will be further park improvements in future years, and we can consider options, new options in the future as well. But I think this is a significant addition. It would be a significant addition under option 3. I realize option 4 is on the floor.
Thank you. I think everybody's had an opportunity to speak, so I'll chime in. I'm in favor of option 4 for a few reasons. I did touch base with a couple members of the Accessibility Committee to see what their thoughts were. They favored option 4. What I like about it is, as Councillor Garnett mentioned, and is that it also includes that structure for younger children as well, and I think that's important. We're trying to attract young families to Sydney, so that option is the most expensive, but it's expensive not just because of the accessibility structure, but because we're trying to accommodate the younger kids as well. In terms of concern about costs, I reflect upon things that we invested in earlier this year. So we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in a new turf field for children in the community at Blue Heron Park. We also contributed significantly to the new track at Parkland Secondary School. And so when we're talking about costs, we have invested significantly in recreational structures for able-bodied kids and families in those two structures. So I don't have any difficulty investing in this additional amount that's required under option 4 to address the needs of a segment of our population who we know whose needs have not been fully met. So for those reasons, I support option 4, and I hope my colleagues will as well. Thank you. Mayor McNeil Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I have a question through you to staff with regards to option 4. Can staff describe what would be wheelchair accessible? I understand we go round would be. But other elements would be wheelchair accessible. What other elements would be wheelchair accessible?
Ms. Clary?
Through to Mayor McNeil Smith, so the surfacing is obviously wheelchair accessible. The 2 to 5 year old structure has a transfer point on it, so although a wheelchair can't access it, it is designed to accommodate children with accessibility challenges, and also the friendship swing is also designed to accommodate children with accessible challenges. And then the We Go Round is fully wheelchair accessible, so that is the only fully wheelchair accessible play structure in this playground.
Thank you.
All right, turning, if there's any other second-time speakers. Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you. It's just very odd to, I'm sorry, I guess this is, I'm just looking for further context to your discussions with the people from the Accessibility Committee, because that was a very key piece of input that we were given earlier, was the idea that having transfer points that made children have to be removed from their chairs was still a barrier. And now they're saying that's not a barrier of concern anymore.
So to respond to that, well, I don't think it's not a concern, but I think what they've done, my understanding is, in looking at the various options available and trying to come up with, as you recall, the discussion was more about back to the drawing board to completely redesign the park. And that's not going to be an option at this point. So looking at this, they're looking, I presume that the We Go Round is a structure that a child in a wheelchair could participate in. And as Ms. Clary said, there's other options as well. Although there's not a ramp, there's transfer points for kids to be able to enjoy those facilities. So that's what I gathered from their comments.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, so the motion on the floor by Councillor Garnett is for option 4 with the additional funding. I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? Okay, none opposed. The motion carries. Thank you, Council. All right. Moving on to item 13B.
Beg your pardon, Chair, there's a second part of that motion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, gosh, I read the both.
Yeah, no, he
You
read,
the second part?
yeah, he read in
Oh,
both
beg your
motions.
pardon.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, thanks anyways. Moving on to item 13B, latecomers agreement for 2313 Orchard Avenue, and look to staff for an introduction. Ms. Verhagen?
Yeah, thank you. This is related to the subdivision of the property at 2313 Orchard Avenue, which was the subdivision of it into 2 small residential lots was approved earlier in 2023. So part of the servicing work that was required for that subdivision involved the extension of the storm main from a point at the intersection of 7th and Orchard Avenue westward toward the front end of this property. So there's legislation in the Local Government Act that sets regulations for latecomer agreements in relation to servicing and development in an extended way like this, which is outlined in the report. There's 2 options for council to consider there in terms of whether to enter into a latecomers agreement with that subdividing, the applicant who did the subdivision, and passing along any fees collected by the benefiting properties that would tie into this new extended storm main. There's 3 of them over the time period of the latecomers agreement, which is a maximum of 15 years. Or the other option is to reimburse the property owner for the proportionate share of the cost of the excess or extended services, so the other 3/4 of the amount of the work, for the town to repay that person now, and then keep any payments collected over the next 15 years from those 3 benefiting properties. So it's the benefits and drawbacks of each are outlined in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Verhagen. Members of council, any questions for staff? All right, seeing none, I'll look to see if there's a motion.
Sure, I'm happy to move the revised staff recommendation. Number one, that town reimburse the applicant of the subdivision at 2313 Orchard Avenue for 75% of the actual cost of installing the extended storm main service on Orchard Avenue. And two, that the town recover its costs by imposing a latecomer charge on each of the following benefiting parcels in the amount of 25% of the amount paid to the subdivision applicant, plus interest to be calculated by bylaw, Lot 7 and 8, Block 6, Section 10, Range 3 East, North Sanish District, Plan 1552, and Lot 13, Block 19, Section 10, Range 3 East, North Sanish District, Plan 1552. And three, that the latecomer charge be imposed as a condition of the owner of a benefiting parcel connecting to or using the extended storm main service on Orchard Avenue.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, thank you. I guess just briefly, I'm happy with reimbursing them now, knowing that if these lots don't redevelop, the town does not recover its costs. But I agree with the staff's assessment in the discussion that the town is better able to handle that cost overrun than developers and an individual homeowner. Furthermore, I think this was probably infrastructure we were going to need to update anyway, and having this updated and the town absorbing this cost as it is seems completely fair to me. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck or Garnett? No? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just, I fully support staff's rationale is very good for wanting to do it this way. Just to provide some context in case others aren't aware, one of the parcels mentioned, 2312 Orchard, is actually a house that's been demolished, and there's an active development the staff's reviewing right now for a 2-lot, single small lot, each with a suite in there. So just to show you in terms of context that there could be on the horizon, we're getting some of that money back quicker than we think. So I'm not sure about the other homes. Didn't look like they were for sale or anything like that at this point, but there's already one that's in the works. So for context, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Council. All right, we have the monthly building report, item 13C, and I don't think we need a motion on that. That's just received for information. And several items of correspondence also received for information. And finally, notice of motion, amendment to council procedure bylaw. Now, is that to be read, Mayor McNeil Smith?
Very, thank you, Chair. I'm just catching up here. So I would move the motion that staff bring forward a proposed amendment to the council procedure bylaw to A, eliminate committee of the whole meetings, and B, to amend regular council meeting schedule from 2 times a month to 3 times a month.
I'll second it.
All right, if you'd care to motivate, Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is timely. We've had the experience through council last term and then the council for a full year this term, having committee of the whole and council meetings. And given the how our council procedure bylaw currently prescribes what type of business comes to committee of the whole meeting and what type of business comes to council meetings, there are sometimes lags and sometimes some repetition from committee of the whole to council meetings. And I would just appreciate staff, I think, given consideration that this could streamline our meetings and balance the workload that council faces and staff may also face from agenda workloads that differ with committee of the whole and council meetings.
Thank you, and I'll turn to the seconder for.
I have nothing further to add, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. With latitude, can I ask a question of staff?
Sure,
that
go
appropriate? So my take on this is I would love to hear staff's perspective on, because this will impact their work schedule. So if you could provide some kind of understanding for me as to how this will impact staff's ability to meet this new schedule. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Garnett. I think from staff's perspective, moving to from potentially, from what's 4 meetings a month, essentially 2 with council and 2 committee of the whole, to 3 council meetings, I think quite frankly, it has the potential to possibly reduce the amount of work. I would say if we were moving to 4 council meetings a month, and I've made this comment before, I think that that would be a challenge, because I think we'd be in a constant cycle of creating agendas, undertaking minutes, etc. So I don't think staff would support that. But I think moving to 3 council meetings has the ability to facilitate, I think, council business, and perhaps spread out the amount of items that are coming forward through to council. So I think there's opportunities there. I have to say that there shouldn't be a rationale necessarily to create additional workload on staff, because I think right now, quite frankly, I think staff are at capacity. So I think as long as we're maintaining the current workflow that we have, going to 3 meetings has a potential benefit.
Thank you. And if I may, just not questions, just some comments or thoughts that I had regarding this, and some concerns. The rationale is put forward by the mayor is on solid footing, I believe. And hearing from staff, that gives me a little more confidence. Part of the committee of the whole that I do think we benefit from, but which we would lose out on, is the informal discussion concept. The idea that we can ask questions and have discussions, it's not in a formal setting, I think provides an opportunity for more input from councillors and for more stuff to be fleshed out before we get to like more formal circumstances of voting on things. I do have concerns around the chair position, in the sense that if the mayor's absent, and we're not talking about now because we've all had experience, and also in terms of succession, because many times mayors in the future will come out of councillor positions, and if they've not had an opportunity to chair meetings at the start of the term, that could lead to difficulties. So I do have concerns about that aspect of it. And given that we've had some committee of the whole meetings that have been 2-3 hours long with presentations on particular issues that were of importance to the community and quite in depth, I do worry about having presentations now in council meetings. And will that lengthen meetings? Will we get to the point where we have to push other agenda items to further meetings? It does streamline the process, but I think it does also open the potential for meetings to be longer and actually possibly slow some things down on the agenda to future meetings. So just some of my comments and thoughts, and I'll leave it for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else care to? Councillor Rintoul?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support the motion. This is just looking for a sort of a proposed amendment to come back for our consideration, so we'll have time to germinate on this and also get some feedback from the community when it comes back. I'm comfortable again with exploring this. It was noted that we've had some long committee of the whole meetings, but we've also had some that quite short and very condensed, and one in about 25 minutes time. So if this can help just sort of bring some balance to that flow and have council make decisions instead of, as the mayor noted, have them be referred from committee to council, seeing delays of a week at times, if not more, then I think this may well be beneficial to explore. So I'll support the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Duck and then Councillor Novak.
Yeah, I share some of my concerns as Councillor Garnett, and you brought up some ones I hadn't thought of, but my concern is that if we're moving to 3 meetings a month, are we actually increasing that workload? Because now and staff have somewhat satisfied that by saying that, you know, we'll balance it out over the different agendas. However, I look to this as, you know, do we need 3 a month? Like, do we have the workload for 3 a month? And one of my considerations were, can we look at maybe quarterly we have, you know, a certain number versus 3 a month every month. Somewhat matching our summer schedule, just to look at that, because if we're going from essentially 22 meetings, council meetings, to somewhere in the neighborhood of 32, that's quite an expansion of a workload. And I too share that, you know, relative to minutes and motions coming forward and staff having to turn those around. You know, is that going to be the first, second, and third Mondays of the month? Is it going to be the first, second, and fourth? And that's when Councillor Rentul's suggesting we'll hear what staff have to come back with that. So yeah, I'm just looking at that balancing more relative to the workload, and maybe saying, okay, do we need 3 a month, or is that a certain number over a quarter? Thank you.
And Councillor Novak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. May I ask a question to staff through you?
Yes, of course.
Through Chair to staff. If we go ahead with this suggestion or motion, and we eliminate regular committee of the whole meetings, would that mean that committee of the whole meetings as an institution is eliminated, or could we call committee of the whole meetings on a pro tem basis or whenever needed, maybe 2-3 times a year if we tend to have backlog of things that we don't want to come through regular council, but we would still wish to discuss them in the sort of forum that Councillor Rintoul was referring to, a more informal and colloquial, if you wish, manner.
Through the chair to Councillor Novak, I guess the devil's in the details in terms of how we look at potential amendments to the procedures bylaw. I mean, if we're talking about eliminating committee of the whole entirely from the procedures bylaw, then it's I mean, we're eliminating the definition of committee of the whole. We're eliminating the regular committee of the whole schedule. So, you know, can we create it such that you allow for the opportunity for special committee of the whole meetings to be called? Might be able to look at that. I don't know if there's other municipalities that have that built into their procedures bylaw. So, devil's in the details. Would have to look at that. I can't say for certainty right now whether or not it is possible to build that into the procedures bylaw, whereby you could have special COW meetings at the call of council.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, staff, just one question for me. So normally we see development applications come forward at committee of the whole often. There's no issue as to whether they come forward to a committee of the whole or a council meeting?
I think I don't know if it was Councillor Garnett or Councillor Duck that spoke to this. I mean, I think the challenge is around, again, building into the procedures bylaw. You know, what is the process at a council meeting for a developer to make a presentation? I think, you know, looking at sticking to or adhering to, you know, allowable timeframes for presentations. Are we going to allow for public participation as part of the developer's presentation? You know, all of these things add to the time frame for a particular meeting. So, you know, again, for sure it's possible to. We've done it before where we have presentations from a developer at a council meeting as opposed to committee of the whole. But we also have, council has a significant amount of business usually on the agendas that they have to deal with as well. So it's a matter of how we approach it in terms of again, potential rules around length of presentations, whether or not public participation is a part of it, that sort of thing. So, again, those are details that we need to look at.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
My view on this is, I think it's a good idea. Thank you to the mayor for bringing it forward. My take on it is that we're still gonna have the same amount of workload. But in some cases, it's gonna be reduced. I mean, the number of times that I look at our council agenda and, you know, it's a reiteration of many of the things that we already talked about at committee of the whole. So it doesn't seem to me a productive use of our time to rehash things that has already taken place at committee of the whole. So I think a good chunk of time that we're currently using on committee of the whole and rehashing at council will become available to us. So I'm not concerned about our council agendas becoming overly large. In fact, I would think the workload would be less because we've got three council meetings. We're not discussing things twice, and we have 3 council meetings to spread things over. So I think it's a good idea, and I will support the motion. Any other further comments or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. All right, that is the end of our regular business. We do have a motion to go in camera.
I'll move that it is in the opinion of council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of the council and officers be excluded from the meeting to consider confidential matters respecting personal information about an identifiable individual who holds a position as an officer, personnel issues pursuant to section 90.1A and C of the community charter, and that council continue the meeting in closed session.
Second.
And all in favor? And motion carries unanimously. Thank you, council.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you.